Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Job, and we are now in chapter 6. We concluded chapter 5, which followed from chapter 4, which was the advice given by Eliphaz. And yesterday, as we concluded, we had mentioned that Eliphaz maintained the references to God, how he would bless the good and punish the evil, that even the righteous, if the righteous had sinned, will experience the judgment of God. It appears that it's like God inflicting pain, and yet he would bandage you. All the words that Eliphaz actually said to Job didn't help him one bit, because he was talking very academically to tell him that, well, you will live long, you will have children, you'll see your grandchildren is just a short period of time. And much of what's happening now is because he must have done something wrong. Now, in chapter 6 and chapter 7, we will be looking at these two chapters because they are together as a complete response by Job. And so we begin, and you will understand that Job is going to disagree with Eliphaz. You also need to remember the language is more difficult to translate because the Hebrew that's used oftentimes it's difficult Hebrew. It is also words that is seldom used, and many a times used only in this book. The thing that I want all of us to remember is that the narrative is written in a poetic form all the way to chapter 42, verse 6. And with this, let's take a look at verse 1. And remember all this. This is and then, which means that it follows from where Eliphaz ended, because Eliphaz was just trying to prove to Job that he must have done something wrong, because God is this kind of a God. He will punish when things go wrong. And then if he does inflict you, he will take care of you. And that would be a more academic answer. Now, Job is the one who is physically experiencing intense suffering. And so Job responded. Now, understand this, that the idea of respond here comes in two words in the Hebrew, uh, one and two. So it should be Job answered and said. Now, all of this is all said in a loud voice. Understand that Job is in pain. He is not here to speak very gently. So he burst out in chapter 3. He wished he was there. He wished he wasn't born. And then Eliphaz came and said, well, no, all your outbursts of anger, you can't place it on God. And now Job responds, and let us pay attention to what he says. He says, if only my anger, not grief, my anger were actually weighed. Now, the idea of grief is not really grief. This is really a vexation, a provocation. That would be the kind of idea. If it was weighed, and if my outburst is a problem, think of it this way. My anger, if laid in the balances together with my disaster, and this would be well, I guess you could say the idea here is a ruin, a calamity, a destruction, right? A calamity. You can see that whatever befell Job was a calamity if they were weighed. So you think of it this way, put in a balance. And so if one side we have Job's anger, what is on the other side? For then it would be heavier than the sand of the sea. And for that reason, my words have been rash. And the word rash in verse 3 literally means to, how should we say? Um, it's more like stammering, meaning he couldn't speak right. And on this side, he is saying, you can balance my anger with sand, and it would be heavier than the sand. So basically, it is, how should we say? It is really to say that uh, the anger of Job doesn't amount to much. I think that would be a way of expressing it. The anger of Job does not amount to much. And because of that, the reason that he has said all these things, it is spoken as a person who is under intense pain. He says, "For the arrows of the Almighty are within me, my spirit drinks their poison, the terrors of God are lined up uh, against me." And this is a picture of being in pain. And he thinks if this is the case, then it is God who has done it to him. And so he calls God this word, Shaddai. Now it's translated as God Almighty or the Almighty because we're used to the terminology El Shaddai. But Shaddai really means enough. Uh, not almighty in just about the ability to do anything, and he's powerful, but he's powerful to stop doing things. And so that is the idea of Shaddai. He created the world in 6 days, and he stopped doing it on the seventh. So the ability to stop is the idea of Shaddai, that he can say that it is enough. And the arrows of Shaddai are within me, and he's looking at that. This is what God has done to me. I am feeling all this anguish because of that. We go on to verse 5, and he gives the explanation. Does the donkey bray over his grass? Does the ox low over his feet? He's using animals, illustration of animals, to their needs. That a donkey doesn't complain about his grass. The dog does not complain about his feet. His feet. Can something tasteless be eaten without salt? Or is there any taste in the, well, this verse 6 is a bit of problematic translation here. Is there any taste in the saliva of strong tasting food? And so this is really to say, how can how can anything be eaten? All these are what we call, this is normal, right? This is normal. If it's tasteless, you need to put salt. And all these people do not complain. The animals don't complain if they receive the minimum of what life is all about. Now, food to me is tasteless. My soul refuses to touch them. They are now loathsome food to me. Uh, it is not something that how should I, it's not something that he would enjoy eating. This is, well, the idea of loathsome, uh you can say that these are what we call weak foods, and it's sick foods, maybe, right? Sick food to me. Not something that he can enjoy, and it's not even the bare minimum a person should have. And so he says this in verse 8. After his comparison to whatever, even animals have the basic needs. Oh, that my request might come to pass, that God would grant my hope, would give what I hope for. My hope is what is hoped for. What is the hope of Job? The hope of Job is this, that God would decide to crush me, that he would let loose his hand and cut me off. The idea of let loose his hand is to enlarge his hand. Cut me off uh, gives us the idea of to, well, I guess to end something, right? To end him or finish him. So if you take a look at if affliction is from God and it has come upon Job, Job is asking God, then might as well finish me. Why torture me? But it is still my comfort. And I rejoice in unsparing pain. Uh, that I have not denied the words of the Holy One. So he's taking comfort. He's taking comfort in these thoughts. What thoughts are they? And so we can now see my comfort, and I can, well, this idea of that I leap, that I beg, and he takes comfort in this because of these words. I have not denied the words of the Holy One. The idea of deny here really is to say that, how should we say, he has not concealed, uh he has not concealed, he has not failed. So that you can see that this particular statement that he makes is very important because it maintains the innocence of Job. Job is now responding to Eliphaz, and with everything that is said, he is maintaining his innocence. And his innocence is the fact that I have not done anything wrong. In fact, I have not failed to do any of the words of the Holy One. And that has been the attitude, and that has been the character of Job since chapter 1 that we have this introduction of Job. And so there is nothing that Job has done wrong. And that's how Job is maintaining this posture. In verse 11, he asks these rhetorical questions. Now, remember at this stage, Job is in immense pain. You have to always bear that in mind. Whenever you read what Job is saying, he is not speaking like a normal man. He is speaking like a man who has lost hope. He is speaking like a man who cannot imagine why things like these have happened to him. And when he hears people saying that he must have done something wrong to deserve this, he is saying, I didn't. I never failed the word of the Holy One. What is my strength that I should wait? What is my end that I should endure? This idea here is how long more? How long more is this going to happen? Understand this, is my strength the strength of stones or my flesh bronze? Do I feel nothing? These statements are very apt to describe people who are in the situation of being tormented, oppressed, suffering. And so he's saying, I I I can't stop thinking of why these things are happening. I am feeling the pain. I am not made of stone. My flesh is not made of bronze. And then he asks, is that my help not within me? Uh, I think verse 13 is saying this. Have I no help? I think it would be better translated as have I no help. Why is nothing helping me? Uh, why is a good outcome driven away from me? And I think the good outcome here, this would be not a good outcome. This would be good counsel, good advice, right? Sound wisdom. Why are they wielded from me? Why have they been driven away from me? Have I no help? No advice? And so these are the statements. So you notice it's very poetic in the way you get an A and a B, right? Most of the time, because it uses two statements to describe and emphasize what's being highlighted. Verse 14. It says here, for the despairing man, there should be kindness from his friend, so that he does not abandon the fear of the Almighty. Now, I think we need to retranslate some of this. He says, by, how should we say, by one who, I think we can delete all this first. By one who withhold kindness from his friends. Basically, it's just rewriting the translation. It's saying, why does one withhold kindness from his friend? He is telling Eliphaz he is not being kind to him. Uh, and then who abandons, who abandons the fear of the Almighty. There is no word not here, right? It doesn't say that. So sometimes in the translation, you find that uh, this little words that's been added, it could actually change the meaning completely. So it says, Eliphaz, you are a person who is withholding kindness from your friend. You have abandoned the fear of the Almighty. This is the accusation of Job of his friends. Beginning from verse 14, I just want to say this as a introduction to the next segment. Job is feeling really lousy. He had lost his wealth, he had lost his children, at least in the appearance of it. And then he has boils from the sole of his foot to the scalp of his head. He has to sit down on ashes. He has no peace. He's in pain. His wife tells him to curse God and die. He is not having a good day. His friends come, and here's Job complaining about his birth. He wished he wasn't born, but he is saying that because he is feeling so much pain. And words from one who is being tormented and in pain needs to be appreciated and heard and sympathized and empathized. So in chapters 4 and 5, Eliphaz came out and rebuked Job. How can you say such things against God? How can you be angry? Who will you be calling if you are angry with God? Uh, God can do all these things. He can punish and then he can bandage your wounds. You must have done something wrong. We are all frail people. We cannot answer against God. So don't speak back to God. That was the kind of tone that Eliphaz had given to Job. And now Job is saying, you know what? You are not helping me at all. You're telling me things that doesn't help me in my situation. Don't tell me about long life. Don't tell me about children. Don't tell me about pain. Tell me what am I to do? And so he's accusing his friend from withholding kindness. The idea of kindness here is chesed, loving kindness, to treat people with kindness. If you don't treat people with kindness, then he really doesn't care how Job feels. He's only interested in describing the hypothetical and the academic thoughts about God, that he is just. He will judge. And so you are suffering. You must have done wrong. And just keep quiet and bear with it. And so Job is saying, I'm not made of bronze. I'm not a piece of stone. Why is it that when I'm in pain, nobody is there to give me the good advice? So you, Eliphaz, have not shown me chesed. You have abandoned the fear of Shaddai. And that is important because that is a strong accusation. You are not even behaving like God in his character of loving kindness. Do not accuse me when you don't know what's happening. Let's look at how he describes his friends. Verse 15, my brothers have acted deceitfully like a wadi, like the torrents of wadi which drain away. Now, this word acted deceitfully, uh, you can you can see it as the idea of betrayal, and then you will also need to think of them as something that will this drain away is pass away. Wadi, torrents. This is in the desert, right? In the desert. And then suddenly you find rain coming. And then with the rain, you suddenly find uh, this is called a wadi or a torrential river. Torrential river. What that means is when it rains, only the river is formed. And nobody can depend on this kind of a river. You cannot depend on it to plant anything. And that's the description of his friends. You are also like the river which are darkened because of ice. It's because the ice is on top and you are hidden underneath, into which the snow melts. And when the snow melts, they will happen only like once a year. Verse 17, when they dry up, they vanish. When the torrential river comes, when the snow is no more, the river stops flowing. When it is hot, they disappear from their place. These are undependable. He's calling his friends undependable. Nobody can depend on such things. Verse 18, their paths, of course, wind along and they go up into wasteland and perish. Useless. You can give me water, but it's of no use. That is the picture. Remember, these are all very imagery driven, they are all very poetic expressions. Verse 19, the caravans of Tema looked. Now, this idea is not the caravans of Tema. This literally means they looked at the paths of Tema. Tema is a place, and then this idea, the travelers of Shiva hope for them, it actually means this is not about the travelers of Shiva. This is about the the roads of Shiva being weighted. Basically, these are all anticipation of useful rivers, but they are not that kind of a river. They were put to shame, for they had hoped. They came there and were disgraced. This is trying to say this is the type of river that has no use. People thought that they were there and then they disappear. It has nothing that you can depend on. And then verse 21 is the conclusion of the accusation. You have become such a wadi, such a torrential river, big, useless, cannot be depended. That is what Job is calling his friends. You see terror and are afraid. You see me and you are afraid. You don't know what to say. You've never seen this happen to anyone before. So this is what it means by terror. All these things that has happened to Job. Verse 22. Job is now asking the friends, did I say, give me something? Did I ask you to offer a bribe from your wealth? Did I ask you to save me from the hand of the enemy? Did I ask you to ransom me from the hands of tyrant? These are all rhetorical. And the answer is no. I didn't ask you for any favor. All he asked is verse 24 onwards. In verse 24, Job asks, he says, teach me. This one comes from the word yara, which is the root word for Torah. Teach me. That's why Torah is a teaching and instruction. Teach me, and I will keep quiet. Then show me how I have done wrong. Don't keep telling me that I am wrong. Show me. Help me understand. So this is the word. Help me understand. Understand what? Understand my errors, right? My errors. How I strayed. How I may have accidentally sinned. Don't tell me that I have sinned. It is useless to me. How painful are honest words? Now, this idea of painful uh, comes from, how should we say, you can say painful, uh, but it also gives us an idea of clarity. That if you tell me words that is upright, then what does your this is what does your argument prove? Now the one is not argument. uh what does your how should we say, yeah, what does your correction prove? This is futile. You say, but there is no evidence. So how to prove? Now, this is the idea here. You think you're saying honest things and you're saying a lot of good things, theoretically speaking, but you're not showing me what I have done wrong. There is no evidence that I actually have done wrong. Carrying on in verse 26. Do you intend to rebuke my words? Now, the idea here is about rebuking is to, you can think of it as to correct my words. You can also think of it to justify my words or clarify my words. When the words of one in despair belong to the wind. Now, this is a very interesting expression. Uh, he says this, for somebody who is like Job, uh, and he is in despair, he is in pain. So his words is like wind. Let it blow away. Don't think too much of it because he is in pain. Obviously, he is going to say something. That is what Job is describing here. You're not trying to correct me. You're not trying to show me anything. You're just saying that I have done wrong. My words that I speak loudly, that it appears as being anger, it's normal, but treat it like wind. Verse 27. You would even cast, and this is not lots. This idea is anger upon the orphans, and this idea barter. Uh, the word barter here is also a very unusual word, and it would be better understood as dig a hole. So the idea here is the friends here is digging a hole for Job to fall in, and so that they could bury him alive. Well, that's a very modern thinking, but that's already happening at the time of Job. In the last few verses, he is now pleading with his friends. Now, agree and turn to me. Please look at me means to begin to look at me. And this is really interesting. And see if I am lying to your face. And the idea of lying here literally means, am I telling a lie? So he said, am I telling a lie to your face? And Job is challenging the friends. Verse 29. Please turn away. It says here, return now. Go home. There will be no injustice because whatever they are saying is injustice. So if they go home, there will be no injustice. That's what it means. And then he says, the second line, turn away, my righteousness is still in it. And this is a problem in the translation. This word here is not turn away, return again. To see my cause is righteous. So the idea here is one, go back and think about what I have said. Two, return and see that I am innocent. That is what he is saying. And verse 30, the question is this: is there injustice on my tongue? Will my palate not discern? The idea of destruction here is, or disaster here is not quite disaster. It is about, uh, I guess you could say, to understand uh, things that is things that are wicked. So these are all rhetorical. And the answer is no. Is there injustice on my tongue? No. Does my palate not discern disasters? And this is yes, he can. He can. So the this is half of the response of Job. Tomorrow we will complete chapter 7 to round up Job's entire reaction to Eliphaz. And of course, his other friends are there listening in on this conversation. And I want to spend a bit more time on Job, mainly to understand where he is coming from. It is easy to go and accuse somebody that he has sinned and that's why bad things have happened. But he is a renowned man of just character. So what happened? And this is what Job is saying. Nothing happened. I did nothing. I am still who I am, but now look at what has befallen me. And this is the entire conversation until the end of chapter 6. And we will begin looking at chapter 7 tomorrow. And so, with this, we've come to the end of our session today.